What's up, everybody? My name's Paul Wakeham, and I love podcasts. And if you're anything like me, you're going to want to stick around to see this app that I built that helps me utilize AI to listen to and better understand and really grasp what my favorite podcasts are saying. I decided to build PodSips after I was out on a run a couple years ago, and I was listening to, I think, an Alex Hormozy podcast. And just like all of his content, it's great, but I feel like it goes in one ear and out the other. He'll say something that I know is valuable, and I can like almost feel my brain trying to grasp it and say, okay, let's apply this. But I have a hard time doing that. I especially have a hard time doing that whenever I don't exactly understand what is being said. And then I don't understand how to apply it to my situation because the situation being discussed isn't directly talking to me. So I decided to build PodSips so that an AI could listen to the podcast with me, so that I could say, hold on, I don't understand what he just said. Help me understand that and then help me apply it to my specific situation. And while I was building the ability to listen to a podcast with my favorite AI, a bunch of other really interesting features came up that I'm excited to show you. First things first, though, PodSips is a fully functional podcast player. You can download episodes, you can save podcast series and follow them. You can skip ahead 15 seconds, you can rewind 15 seconds, and all the stuff that you're used to from your favorite podcast apps like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket Casts or YouTube, whatever you use for podcasts, the standard listening experience is baked in by default inside of PodSips. The extra things that I built on top are what make it really interesting, and I can't wait to show them to you. So I have PodSips pulled up here, and I have the latest episode of Alex Hormozy's The Game pulled up, and I'm listening to it. What I'm going to show you is how you can chat with this episode without having to go find the transcript and say, I'm at 4 minutes and 53 seconds. All I have to do is start a voice chat and speak to the podcast, and PodSips will help me understand exactly what he's talking about right now. Let me show you how it works. Help me understand what he's talking about right now in simple terms.
Let me pull up the part you're on so I can explain it clearly. He's explaining how to figure out what a customer is worth compared to what it costs to get them. First, he defines lifetime gross profit, basically the total gross profit you make from a customer over time. And then he defines customer acquisition cost, which is all the costs needed to get a new customer. Then you compare the two to see if your marketing and sales are efficient.
Does he give some kind of way to calculate this or some kind of golden ratio, something that says whether or not the business is doing a good job? How can I apply this to my own business? Give me an example.
Let me pull up the part where he talks about the ratio so I can give you a concrete example. He mentions a rule of thumb of about 3 to 1, meaning roughly $3 in gross profit for every $1 you spend to acquire a customer, though it depends on how automated your business is. To apply it, estimate your average gross profit per customer and your average customer acquisition cost. Then divide the first by the second. For example, if a customer brings you $800 in gross profit and it costs you $100 to acquire them, your ratio is 8 to 1, which is very strong by that rule.
Okay, so that's voice chat with this single episode. And let's say I wanted to go and listen to those specific sections where PodSips pulled from. And maybe it was around my section, so I can just keep playing, or maybe he talks about it somewhere else in the podcast. To get the sections that it pulled from, all I have to do is tap the citations here, and it will take me right to that section. So I'm currently at 4 minutes and 53 seconds, but he also talks about LTV to CAC at 7 minutes and 29 seconds. All I have to do is tap this.
Keeper probably does this. Just look at your advertising total.
And it will start playing from that section. So now I can take the concept that he's explained, I can understand it better so that I can apply it to my own business. And then if I want to hear it from his words, all I have to do is tap the citations and it will take me right to that section of the podcast. So as you saw, that was a voice chat, but I can also send a message via text and it will work the exact same way. I really hate typing on my phone, so I built the voice chat functionality for it to have all of the same features and all of the same capabilities whenever you send a message via text. Okay, next, let's say I finished this episode and I remembered something that he said that I didn't chat about, but I wanted to come back to, but I don't want to have to scrub through the entire podcast and find the section where he talks about the thing that is just like floating around in my brain. No problem. I can start another chat and the AI will be able to search through the entire podcast and find the section that I'm looking for. So in this case, I remember he said something about the 3 components of business. So let me start another chat and show you how the search functionality works, where the AI is aware of everything that he said and can go find that section for me. Can you find the section of the podcast where he talks about the 3 components of business and explain it to me?
Let me pull that part and walk through it clearly. Around 8.5 minutes in, he says the 3 components are lead generation, conversion or sales, and delivery or fulfillment. He explains that the more of those that are automated, the more efficient the business can be, and the less profit cushion you need to safely scale.
Explain that last part to me. What does that mean, that if these 3 pieces of the business are efficient, there's more cushion to scale safely?
It means if lead gen, sales, and delivery run efficiently, especially with automation, you make more profit per customer and have more predictable operations. That extra margin acts like a buffer for mistakes, hiring ramps, or rising customer acquisition costs. So growth doesn't break your cash flow when things get messy.
Awesome. And just like before, all I have to do is scroll up, tap that citation, and it will take me right to 8 minutes and 30 seconds, where he talks about the 3 different components of business. So that's how you chat with voice or text with a single podcast episode, either while you're listening and it's aware of what you just listened to and what you're about to start listening to, and it's aware of the entire podcast episode, and it can search through it and find the topics that you're interested in. Now, as I built that feature, I thought it would be really great if I could not only chat with one podcast episode, but what if I could chat with an entire podcast series? That is, every single episode that a single podcast series has ever put out. So I built that. Here we can see the training data podcast from Sequoia Capitals pulled up, and I can start a chat with just a single episode and add it to a chat. Or I can add all 101 episodes of this podcast series to a chat and chat with my voice or chat via text, and it will go search across all of the episodes of this entire podcast series to answer my question. On a recent episode of this podcast, I remember they were talking about how simulations of customer behavior could probably be simulated with thousands of Meta or Facebook ads or Instagram ads instead of doing what the company that was being interviewed does. Can you go find that episode and find that section for me?
Let me pull up that part so we can zero in on the discussion. It's in the episode Simulating Humans at Scale, Similes June Sum Park. The section you're thinking of is around 23 minutes in, where they ask why not just run 1,000 Facebook ads to get real click-through data instead of relying on simulated behavior.
And just like before, I can see the citations and it pulls up that exact podcast episode for me to start listening to. And all I have to do is tap.
I am somebody for this stuff.
Isn't that real world data almost more useful than the simulated data on?
And it will take you right to that section of that podcast. So now we can chat with one podcast episode while we're listening or after the fact, and we can chat with an entire podcast series and all of its episodes. But then I thought, how cool would it be if I could chat with multiple entire podcast series all at the exact same time? That is, every single episode of the Training Data podcast, plus all the episodes from another entire podcast series. So I built that. Let me show you what that looks like. I'll go find another one of my favorite podcasts called Core Memory from Ashley Vance. He and his team are awesome. I can't recommend this podcast enough. It's like the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge in the coolest of the cool technology. So here they have 84 episodes, and I can add all 84 of these episodes to an existing chat. So here we have the simulating customers with social media ads. It has 101 episodes already. That's the one from training data that we already chatted with. I'm going to add it to that. And here we can see there's now 185 episodes from 2 shows. And any question that I have of crossover between these shows or differing opinions between these shows, I can ask that question and it will automatically go find those sections for me without any issue and pull back the relevant sections for each of the episodes that talk about that topic for me to immediately tap and start listening to. So now I could keep adding additional podcast episodes individually to this same chat, or I could add additional entire podcast series to this chat and keep continuing that conversation. Now, I don't think it makes sense to add hundreds of podcast series all to the same chat, because then the context that the AI is looking at isn't really constrained and it's kind of just really general. So that's chatting with one podcast episode, an entire podcast series, multiple entire podcast series in the same chat, or we can add different episodes from multiple podcast series all at the same time to the same chat. Next, what I want to show you is this feature that I call SIPs. SIPS. So I'm a huge fan of Twitter and X. I like it because I feel like it forces people to condense the most valuable things they have to say into a tweet. I wanted that same experience, but for podcasts. I didn't really want clips per se. I wanted to be able to quickly scroll through a feed of the most impactful, most interesting, most viral moments from the podcasts that I follow and from podcasts that I may be interested in. Here on the home screen, you can see I have the Sips for You section, and it shows you the most recent sips from the episodes of the podcast series that you follow. I can click on See All here, and just like X, I can scroll a feed of the most interesting moments from the podcasts that I follow. And I can like these sips, I can save them for later, and you can go to your library and find those saved sips. I can share the sips with people. Whenever I share a sip, it will create a shareable link that takes the person directly to that section of the podcast to listen to that section of the podcast. Or I can just click this play button.
Many investors that are looking at situations like you are with such a high rep count.
And it will take me to that section of the podcast immediately. So that's SIPs. It effectively allows you to consume podcasts like you consume Twitter posts or X posts. You can scroll through a feed of the most interesting or most impactful pieces of the podcast transcript so that you can decide if the episode that you're about to start listening to is the one you want to actually listen to. If you tap on a sip, it takes you directly to the podcast episode where you can see the people that are associated or on the episode, and then you can see all of the sips associated with the episode. This episode has Ben Thompson. He's on the TBPN podcast, one of the best podcasts, talking about Xbox. So that's PodSips. It is my dream podcast app. It has actually turned into everything I had hoped it to be and so much more. If you're interested in testing out the app and you would be willing to give me feedback, send me a message and I would be happy to give you an extended free trial or add you to the test flight so that you get unlimited free usage of all the premium features. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll give PodSips a try and interact with your podcasts.